Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, sponsored by the National Health Association. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and today I'm really delighted to have as my guest Kim Campbell. Kim is a kind of nationally recognized culinary expert in the world of plant-based food prep and food and nutrition. She's written three books, PlantPure Nation Cookbook, PlantPure Kitchen Cookbook, and PlantPure Comfort Food Cookbook. And she's also the director of culinary education for PlantPure Nation. So welcome, Kim. It's such a pleasure. Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association, the oldest organization in the world championing the extraordinary benefits of a whole plant food diet and healthy lifestyle, as well as water-only fasting. We believe that health results from healthful living and focus on evidence-based science that promotes the health of you and your loved ones, as well as the health of all animals and the environment. We feature experts from a cross-section of disciplines within the plant nutrition, vegan, psychological, environmental, and animal compassion sectors. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, the NHA's Director of Health Education.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we've never had an opportunity to meet, but I've been connected to this Campbell family for a while. So, it's kind of like an elephant in the room. So we'll get out of the way. You are the daughter-in-law of T. Colin Campbell. I'm sure people are wondering about the Campbell name, and you're married to his son, Dr. Nelson Campbell. So, I wanted to ask you right out of the blocks, though. I was listening to an interview that your husband Nelson did, and he was touting you highly. I gather that he's not the cook in the house, you are, so I understand that. But he was really highlighting how long you've really been involved in plant-based food prep and how you've been experimenting with that over close to 30 years plus. So I guess the first question I'm asking you is your segue into this way of thinking, this way of living. Did it precede your contact with him? Was it something going on in your life long before you met him? And give us a little bit of that backstory, if you can, for you.
Yes. So before I even met the Campbells or Nelson, I was always interested in nutrition and health. I thought I wanted to be a nurse and get into some aspect of the medical field. I was fascinated with food. I loved cooking and all the culinary things. So it kind of matched up. When I met Nelson, Colin was doing his research in China. So he was traveling a lot. He'd be there for a month at a time and come back and share his slides and his research. And so I think that he sort of inspired me back in high school to look into the nutrition programs across the state. I wanted to go to culinary school, but my father said, no, you can't go to culinary school. You have to go to a 4-year college. So that's where it started, really. But it happened before I met Nelson. So the culinary part, yeah.
Were there any health issues that were promulgated that or promoted that in you, or was it just something you kind of aspired to or were drawn to on your own without really, sometimes people have a health crisis or they have a family situation that kind of promoted their segue into thinking about this. Was anything like that happening for you?
No, I did not. I struggled with weight a little bit when I was younger. So, of course, when you're 15, 16, you're trying all the different diets and you're curious. So that was probably the only reason that not the only reason, but the primary reason. But everybody in my family was healthy at the time. I just really enjoyed culinary and nutrition. So that was my passion. Now, later on, there is a story I will share with you, but initially, no, that wasn't the case.
Yeah. So, we've mentioned it a few times, and there are many people that are aware of the well-known movie PlantPure Nation, which was done a number of years back. But we keep talking about PlantPure Nation. So why don't you give a little bit, because many people may not know what that is and what that's about. So if you can give just a little bit of info on that grassroots movement, what it really meant, how it came to be, and then your role in it as the director of culinary education, which is a very important piece because we know so much of it starts with the food.
Mm-hmm. Well, initially, Nelson was doing jump starts here in our town in Mebane. And I was teaching school at the time, and he had hired a chef. But I ended up helping out a lot, and I ended up leaving my job to get involved in these immersions and jump starts, we called them at the time. We did biometrics pre and post, and we did hundreds of people in our community. And so we were having a lot of success. So Nelson went to Kentucky because in Kentucky, Colin and Dr. Esselstyn had spoken to the legislature there, and Nelson had a proposal to pass a legislation in Kentucky. So you'll learn about that in the film, and you'll learn about, because to me, PlantPure Nation is about why you don't know this information. And the legislation was not passed. I probably shouldn't tell the story, but we got the cameras in there and we were able to interview people, and you'll understand why it wasn't passed and the forces that were there to prevent that from happening.
Well, what was the specific legislation, though? You keep saying legislation. What was it exactly?
To pass a bill that said that eating primarily plant-based nutrition was optimal for health. They didn't want to pass that, which would have set a precedence for schools and all kinds of things. But Kentucky is a very agriculturally run state. So yeah, that legislation was, it's very minimal. It didn't even say plant-based. It said primarily a plant-based diet.
Right.
So when you watch the film, you can actually see the legislation that Nelson took to the legislature to pass, and it did not pass. We didn't plan on that happening. So that we didn't have that plan in the film. So when that happened, we really thought, wow, we have a great film here, because it told the story. And many of the legislators stood up and talked about why they did not want to pass it. And some talked about why they did want to pass it. We had physicians in the film that talked about why physicians are not being trained in nutrition. So it was really, to me, it was a film telling people this is why we don't know this information. It's not mainstream information. You don't go to your physician's office and they don't put you on a plant-based diet. You know that. So I think a lot of people wonder, well, why is that not happening? It goes back to our government and the standards. So Nelson's call to action at the end of the film was to start pods and get into a grassroots movement so we can spread the message through our communities. Yeah.
And so that's where you started getting involved in the culinary part of that. I know that was part of, the pods are another form of the immersion program. Is that what it was? Trying to immerse people into the program and then have them follow up and do the testing and the kinds of things that they were doing with the physicians. Is that part of what that was?
Well, the pods were a call to action to get communities to come together and do different projects within their community. They could do jump starts if they wanted to, but we really wanted to become like meetup groups. We wanted to see more of that happen, and maybe even pass legislation in their own state. We've never had a pod do that, but there are thousands of pods and they're all over the world. So that they don't necessarily do jump starts, Frank. They do. Each pod has different projects that they work on.
Okay, but the goal of it is to spread this idea of plant-based nutrition and to try to get as many people turned on to that as possible, I'm assuming. Yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like our pod together every month, and we do culinary classes. I've had gardening people come in and speak to the pod. Lots of education.
Kim, I'm going to ask you the same question that probably an editor or a publisher asked you about your books. With so many cookbooks that are available, what makes yours part of what we want to look at? What makes yours different? What's the crux of the PlantPure Nation cookbooks compared to other, plant exclusive cookbooks that are out there?
Yeah. Well, I should say there are a lot of really good plant-based cookbooks out there. So mine are not the only ones. Right. But there's a lot to choose from, but mine are primarily whole food, plant-based. They're not salt-free. They're not sugar-free. They're oil-free. I believe my philosophy is that if we have to make this food taste good, we have to make it appealing. So I do use little bits of salts and sugars, and whole foods. I don't use oils. I use things like nuts and seeds, right, because we are never going to change the world on an SOS-free diet. So I think that's the difference. My cookbooks tend to be more traditional recipes that people grew up eating meat-based dishes. So what I did is I veganized a lot of them. So I did that with my family's recipes and Nelson's family's recipes.
We're here with Kim Campbell, the Director of Culinary Education for PlantPure Nation. We're going to take just a few moments and hear from our sponsor now, the National Health Association, and we'll be right back. And now, to put a smile on the sponsors of the National Health Association, you're listening to the Health Science Podcast Show. I want to remind you to visit the National Health Association website. where you'll find incredible resources to support your healthy lifestyle, including plant-exclusive eating without added salt, oil, and sugar. Simply go to healthscience.org or nationalhealthassociation.org. Be sure to check out membership, which is $35 per year for those living within the U.S. and $55 for those living outside the U.S. You'll be amazed at all the information and benefits you'll receive. As a member, you're kept up to date on the latest evidence-based tools for health promotion. You'll receive the incomparable quarterly magazine Health Science, a beautiful 40-page advertising-free publication mailed to your home or offices, loaded with articles, recipes, inspirational stories, and interviews with world leaders in the fields of personal health, plant-based nutrition, water-only fasting, animal rights, and environmental support. And you'll receive details about life-changing events, such as the 2023 NHA Conference set for June 23 to the 25th, 2023 in Cleveland, Ohio, which will be the NHA's 75th annual NHA Conference. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and now back to the show. Welcome back to the Health Science Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and I'm here with Kim Campbell. And Kim, we're talking about, you were addressing this idea that you needed to make things, tastier and more interesting for people who are certainly transitioning in many cases away from very compromised diets that have been really loaded with many things that trigger all kinds of food addictions, whether those are excessive additives, high salt, high oil content, and all that. And I know the NHA, this organization, is very much about promoting that SOS-free approach. In that context, and you made a statement, and I understand the statement, that it's hard to make that kind of global change without having some salt and sugar and those kinds of things that might be added to that. But I know some people have argued that getting the widest range and widest variety of things like herbs and spices, for example, can compensate for some of those kinds of things and also provide a whole other level of nutritional quality to the food and help people break those addictive patterns to salt, oil, and sugar. What do you feel about that? And do you highlight some of that in your own food prep and in your own education?
Yes. In fact, my second book, I always said salt to taste, because I feel like everybody's taste preferences are different. But I find that as people start to eat this way, and they, they really get their diet clean and they're eating whole food, plant-based dishes, they really start to notice the salt and the sugar. So, adding that as needed, maybe just a little bit on your food when you're serving it, because the more you get away from it, the more you taste it when you have it. I mean, we were just recently somewhere and had a dessert at a restaurant. It was so sweet. I'm not used to eating sugar like that. So I think just teaching people to start out small, and then they can scale back on the salt and the sugar, because I don't eat a lot of sugar and I don't eat a lot of salt. But I think if we start out not being able to flavor the food, we lose a lot of people.
Yeah, well, I understand that, and I wanted to address that in your book, the PlantPure Nation. The comfort food. Is that where you have a little bit more of a transitional approach? I mean, for people, when you call, what do you call comfort food from your standpoint?
Comfort food are the foods that we are traditionally used to. So I went all around different cultures and ethnicities, and I picked out that food that is their comfort food. Like I went to Israel, and I did falafels. That's food. So I made that and veganized it plant-based. And then I went to the Mexican, and I did a mole sauce.
Right.
Done sushi. So this book, I kind of go into the other cultures, because we're a melting pot here in this country. So you can go to any city, New York, San Francisco, and find just about a ton of food. So that was my goal, was to find those comfortable, traditional foods in different cultures.
Well, that many years ago, I wound up doing an ebook, and it was a lecture series that I did called A Plant-Based Guide to Eating Out in the Real World. And the bottom line of that approach was that when you look at many of the ethnic cultures, as you described, they've been utilizing plant prep for centuries. So my mentality was, why reinvent the wheel? Why not take advantage of these, these various approaches that they've done. Now, they're not perfect. And that's where I was taken to task, because as you know, they will use some salt, they will use some oil, they'll have some of those things. But the truth is, in transition, as people are eating out and adopting this whole plant approach, that brings people into the fold. And I'm at a point where I feel in education that rather than absolute perfection, though that's a nice thing to ascribe to, we're at a point where the environment and the pressures on all the things around us, we just need to bring people into the fold. We have to get them to stop eating meat, dairy, and all of these foods that are feeding industries that are industries of destruction, of self-destruction. So I understand your approach, and I think it's cool. And I think it's teaching people kind of where they're at and bringing them in. And as you say, as you get more sensitive, you'll have your own taste will restructure themselves, so to speak. And that's exactly what we see when we have people eating this way, or people fasting, for example. They'll come out of that and all of a sudden they'll taste things that they weren't even tasting before, and they don't need as much of those additives added, so that's kind of cool. Are you still doing the TV show that you did in the past?
So during the pandemic, I had the idea of doing cook-alongs every week. So I
thought it was brilliant. I mean, I read that in Nelson's interview, and I said, what a brilliant idea. The Plant-Based Kitchen Live, that's what it was called, right?
Yeah, Kitchen Live. And I wanted everybody to cook along with me live so they could see the mistakes, so we could just kind of be a family and go through it. And at first, the first couple times it was a little stressful, because you never know what you're going to do. But we got the nicest people that joined and participated in the recipes. And this cookbook, the one you talked about, PlantPure Comfort Food, came from that. So for 52 weeks, I did more than one recipe in a week, and I got all kinds of feedback. And at the end of the year, we stopped the shows, and I called Ben Bella and said, I think I have a cookbook. And it was tested by everybody, and it was so much fun. And I keep telling Nelson I want to go back to it, but we've just been so busy doing other things here at PlantPure, developing our dry line, that we haven't had time. But we have some shows taped, so we are going to get back to it, but they won't be live, unfortunately.
Yeah, but the brilliant idea of people signing up and getting a grocery list and being able to buy products and then cooking hands-on with you, I mean, it's really a brilliant idea, because, and let's address that now, because I think when people change over to doing this, two things come up that are important. One is affordability, and the other is accessibility. And let's address that, because, one of the big arguments always was in the past, I can't eat plant-based, it's going to be so expensive, which we know it's not, because beans and grains and things are not expensive items, and they can be such a mainstay of this eating plan. And then also accessibility, how do I shop? How do I make it easy to purchase and get involved in the buying part of that? So now that you're not doing that and you're into, doing other things with PlantPure, talk about how you approach in your teaching and in your work that idea of affordability and accessibility for people, because it's such a hands-on kind of concept.
Right. Well, most of the recipes that I build come from, I hate to say it, but I get most of my groceries at Super Walmart here in our community, because it's a great grocery store. They have organic, they have everything. Not every Walmart is like that, but if I can't get it at Walmart, I keep that in mind. If it's a recipe that I'm developing for the public, well, are they going to be able to get jackfruit, or are they going to be able to get, rye flour or something, which I don't use that, but I'm always really careful and cognizant of where I get my food and how much it costs, because it isn't hard to do, and it shouldn't be expensive, and you shouldn't have to have every gadget in your kitchen, although I do. And I'll speak to that too. I just think we have gadgets in our garage. Nelson's got all kinds of tools out there that he uses for different things. Why wouldn't you have tools in your kitchen that make cooking easier and just easy?
Yeah, why don't you address that for the simplicity? What are those tools, and why should they be in the kitchen?
Yeah, so my kids grew up, and they were used to always having a food processor and a Vitamix and all those fancy things. And when they went to college, they didn't know what to do. So I got them some basic things. I got them a little NutriBullet blender, which works great. That's all I ever use. I hardly ever use my Vitamix. I love it, but I don't use it very often. I have a food processor, which is great. I probably use that the most. And I have an Instant Pot, which you don't have to have. But if you have those three things and some really good knives, you're all set. You don't have to get an air fryer, an ice cream maker. I have all those things,
Right.
but you don't have to have those things. So I think people think they have to have everything at once. You can just kind of build on it. But my kitchen is, it's an investment in my health, and it's an investment in my time. The more things you have in your kitchen to make life easier, the less time you're going to spend in your kitchen.
I'm here with Kim Campbell, the Director of Culinary Education for PlantPure Nation. And Kim, when people want to find you and follow you, what's the URL? What's your location online where they can find you?
Yeah, so I do all the social media for PlantPure. So you can reach me through PlantPure Instagram, PlantPure Nation Instagram. You can reach me through PlantPure Chef Instagram, and I have a Facebook account for both of those as well. So PlantPure Chef, PlantPure Nation. And then we have PlantPure Communities, which is our nonprofit arm, and that's on Facebook and Instagram. So that's as far as I've gone. No TikTok for me.
You're not doing the crazy stuff on TikTok. I know. Yeah, I know it's wild out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that you also were involved in creating and marketing a line of food products, including frozen foods and things of that nature. Is that still in play? And have you developed that more, or have you put that on the back burner? Give us a little background on how that evolved, and what that led to in terms of PlantPure Nation.
So I would love to share our new product that we just launched about a week or two ago. If you go to plantpurenation.com, it's all up there. And what it is we have 8 different packs, and each pack is kind of a sauce. And then we have a recipe book that goes with it. So for example, we have a cheese sauce. And if you go into our online cookbook, you can make probably 15 recipes just using the cheese sauce. Things like soups and stews and casseroles and all sorts of things. Or you can just make the cheese sauce by itself and do something yourself with it. We
Right.
have a peanut sauce. We have a curry sauce. I have an enchilada sauce. I mean, we make taco soup with it and stuffed peppers. There's a burger mix. And then I hate to say it, Frank, we have a cookie mix. We have a cookie mix because I think people love a really good plant-based cookie now and then. So I put that in there. So
Now, there's a place for the desserts. Look, we still have that idea, and the fact is, you can make incredible cookies and desserts in a really amazingly healthy manner. And why not? I mean, if someone's going to have it, why not have that option? And I think it's fantastic. So you're not doing the dried thing that you did before, where you'd have a dry thing and then you'd add a wet thing to it, and you were creating a whole kind of
yeah,
menu for people at home.
right. That was more of a meal in and of itself. So it was like a
Right.
mac and cheese. This is like a dry pack, but you
Okay.
just add milk or water to it. Most of them are water, and then you have a sauce. And
So
then
if
you take that sauce and you can build a lot of different recipes with it.
I got it. So if I wanted to make, like a Buddha bowl with rice and veggies and a bunch of different things, I can use that sauce as a
Yes.
topping for that, and add flavor to that, and you
Mhm.
have, how many of those sauces do you have?
I believe we have the cheese sauce, the enchilada sauce, the peanut, the curry. We have a gravy, and then we have the burger and the cookie. And I missed one. I'm so sorry. I'll think of it in a minute. But yeah, there's 8 packs altogether,
So
6 sauces and a burger and a cookie.
that's your new launch right now, basically.
It's our new launch, and I really like it. I use it all the time
Well,
because
how's it doing? How is it actually doing?
it's doing well. We're selling it. I mean, the problem with PlantPure is, having the money to market it. That's the trick. So getting on podcasts and sharing this with people like you is a great thing. We've got other people that are promoting it as well. So we're cross our fingers. Check it out though. It's great. When I cook, getting all the spices out and the flours and the vinegars and all of that can be time consuming. I did it all for you. So all you have to do is think about the vegetable and the grain. The sauce is done.
I'm a big supporter of doing things for people on the run, because let's face it, I raised a family of 5 children myself, and you get to that point where I was homeschooling and working and to have something like that is really a godsend in a way, because it's easy to, you put a little rice, you cook a few veggies, steam a few things, and now you've got this incredible tasty sauce that just gives it a little umami. It gives it that savoriness that is a turn on. Let's face it. I mean, we want to be turned on too. a little bit when we're eating, and I'm all for that. You said that you and Nelson are involved in a lot of directives now related to PlantPure. I got this launch. What other kinds of things? I know one of your passions was always about children and family nutrition. Is that something that is a part of this new direction for you? Do you focus on those kinds of things, or?
I haven't done anything with that. I used to write some blogs on it. I thought about doing a children's cookbook. Cookbooks are a lot of work. I'm not sure I'll do any more of them, but pretty much what we've been doing is just fine tuning this dry line, which takes a lot of work because we're constantly testing and retesting. And then I had to build the cookbook to go with it. So there were 50 recipes in the cookbook that goes with the dry line in addition to the cookbook. And then we're doing some education. So we do 3 shows a week that we're storing and saving for later. So that's pretty much it for my education.
And those shows are on plantpurenation.com. Is that where they are?
They're going to be on, I think they're going to be on PlantPure Communities. That's where we were going to put them. So we're a little undecided. They were supposed to come out last week, and so possibly will come out on Friday, but just stay tuned. If you go to PlantPure Chef and PlantPure Nation, we will let everybody know when those shows come out. We've taped 4 of them. So
with your product line, you have that, I gather you have that fulfilled and put together in some kind of industrial way. Is that what happens? You've given that over to some way to do that, I guess.
Yes. We have a co-packer in California, and he's packing them, and they're in a warehouse. And if you order them by the kit, it's much more reasonably priced. We've had some complaints about the cost right now. The cost is a little higher until we get more people to order. So those prices will go down as more people order. So
are those ingredients partially organic, not organic at all? How do you describe the ingredients?
We can't call it organic, but they're GMO free.
They're GMO free.
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully, as we sell more, we can get them to the organic point. But initially, that would have probably been too costly.
So Kim, what else? Where do you see this going for you in terms of PlantPure, and what's actually setting up in your life now? What's kind of the goal, the directive? Where do you see it going? Where do you hope it will go?
I hope. Okay, I'll tell you what my dream is.
Yeah, let's hear your dream.
Nelson would love to do more films, because we just did From Food to Freedom, which we haven't really even fully launched that. That's going to be put up on YouTube here very soon. My passion is to start doing actually programming. I would like to do immersions and possibly do them at an inn or, some facility where people could come to us and we could feed them just like we did in From Food to Freedom, feed them the food, do the biometrics. If they're diabetic, we would have a doctor there and the doctor could monitor them, and it would be a 7-day program. In addition to that, I would like to have cooking schools where people come to us for cooking schools throughout the year, like maybe once or twice a month for 3 or 4 day weekends. So that's what I want to do. I know Nelson wants to do films, and I think he's very interested in also doing immersions. So that's
the immersions can be, because this is something I've done a lot in my life. The immersions could be like 10-day retreats or whatever they are, as you did, and you can combine cooking school with the retreat. I mean, you can do it in a number of ways. It would be interesting. And having a home base, a kind of a fountainhead, would be kind of cool, because otherwise you're jumping around. It gets a little bit more complicated. So but that model, that's an interesting model. And I think there's an audience for that, where people would love that immersion. They love to be exposed. And of course, anytime you're feeding them and teaching them how to cook and prepare, it's such a turn on for people. So it's fantastic.
And having a product for them when they finish the immersion, because I know when we did From Food to Freedom, we sent them all on their way. And then we went back after a few months to see how they were doing. And some were doing great and others were not. But if they had the food with them, because I created the cookbooks as a resource, but if they had the food, the dry packs, I think that would have helped a lot. So the goal would be to teach them how to use these packs in lots of creative ways. So when we did our immersion in Greensboro in the film, we did a lot of education around the food, a lot.
In terms of this immersion, I realize food is the crux of what we're talking about, because we know the power that plant exclusive nutrition has for preventing and reversing most of the major problems that people suffer with. Where does your stand, and how does this play in your own life for other lifestyle factors that are part of really what help people get well, meaning things like physical activity, stress management? Do you see places for that in your work, or are you so focused on just the nutritional piece? Give me a little idea of the bigger vision that you have in terms of how you see the bigger picture of things.
Yeah, I actually think a great deal of our health is it's mind, body, spirit, right? I think being connected to other humans, like-minded humans, getting off of the media, disconnecting, which is hard. It's a really hard thing to do.
Right.
Sleeping, people need to be disconnected. They need to be active and sleeping, because it's not just about the food. You can eat the food and it's very, very healing. But if you aren't sleeping and you're overworking and you're on your computer and you're not moving, you're not going to get the full benefits.
Right.
Because I know when we were working with the diabetics, it was really important to get them moving to get their blood sugar down. So I think all of that's why I think doing an immersion and actually living together, living the life together every single day, so they learn how to do it.
Yeah, that's
Because,
fantastic. So
Mhm.
is there anything that you'd like to speak about that we did not touch on? Anything that we missed that you really want to let people know about?
Well, one thing that, we talked about children, and I'm very passionate about kids, and I go on my rant wagon sometimes. So I'm going to say this because a lot of people think they can't change their children, and they're 8, 9, 10 years old. You can. I used to teach middle school, and kids are sponges for information. So one of the things I did when I was teaching is I was taught biology, and I turned one of the units into nutrition, the digestive unit, and just really teaching them about how it works, educating them on the why, and then getting them in the kitchen and cooking it and preparing it, and just really loving the food and feeling connected to the food.
Right.
And I think if you're raising young children, get them in that kitchen. They love to do hands-on things. They love to be connected with you. And especially if they're making decisions, if they're opening up cookbooks and finding recipes, and if they're not perfect and there's a little bit of something in there you wouldn't want them to have, let them do it anyways. And if it tastes terrible, just eat it and smile, because
Right.
I feel like with the 3 kids, we didn't do everything perfectly, but that's the one gift you can give your kids, is just to really get them in that kitchen, get them connected, and educate them about the why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Like I said, I raised 5 kids, and my rule of thumb, and I tell people this is my rule of thumb for raising children is if they make it or grow it, they'll eat it. And so I got them in the kitchen sprouting, making things. And so my kids today, as adults, they're all independently able to do all their own cooking and all their own shopping and all of that. And if you can give them that legacy, that's a beautiful thing to give your family. And you're right, have fun with it. And I try to tell people that's what this is about too. I think
Yeah.
too often people see it as deprivational, as penance almost, to do and live this way, when in fact we're looking at having fun and really embracing things in a very compassionate and loving way and turning people on. And I think I like your mentality about approaching that way and bringing that in and giving people some diversity in how they can taste and enjoy the savoriness of this food.
And letting them make the mistakes. Because if you don't let them make the ice cream mistakes and the burger mistakes, they aren't going to learn. So our kids had the ice cream and they had the burgers and they never felt good. And it always I was like, oh, that's so good. You have a stomach ache, you have a headache, because that was the lesson that they learned. So, and
Yeah,
let them make
beautiful.
mistakes. Yeah.
So do you have any final words you'd like to share with the audience out here? Any parting words, any parting thoughts?
Well, I hope you will get the new cookbook, because I love it. It's our favorite book. It's me learning after 2 other books. So I hope you will do that and get involved in your community. Start a pod, find a pod, look into our food. It's great. I really love it. And just, you know what? Just be forgiving of yourself. And every time you make a meal, make it right. And if it's not right, you got another meal to correct it. So don't overthink too much. Just enjoy it.
Well, Kim, I want to really thank you. I'm really grateful that you took the time today to share your insight, your wisdom, your heart with everybody. It's great. And I encourage the audience to really follow Kim. Her location will be in the show notes. You'll see all of that. Take advantage of the cookbook she shared with you. try out the dressings and the sauces that she has available now on PlantPure Nation, and it'll bring some umami and excitement to your daily food prep. And I really want to thank the audience out here, because without you, we couldn't do what we do. I couldn't do what we do. And I want to really thank you for being part of this very happy community. On behalf of the National Health Association, I want to thank you for being with us. I'm Dr. Frank Sabatino, the host of this Health Science Podcast, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Health Science Podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association. Thank you for joining us today and for your commitment to evidence-based health science that backs a whole food, plant-exclusive lifestyle and contributes to the well-being of all people, animals, and our environment. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino. Be sure to leave a rating and a review, and we'll see you on the next show.